Hi, welcome. I'm saying welcome as if I'm talking to somebody. Maybe I'm just talking into a void with nobody on the other side of this camera. But yeah, here we go. So this is one of those videos. I think this, yeah, I don't know where this is gonna fit, but I think conceptually this is supposed to be the first video. And I want to tackle the question that most people think they have a hand on, but I don't actually think they do. It's like it's one of those maths questions where if you get the first question wrong, you are in trouble. Because if you get the first one wrong, the subsequent questions gonna require the answer that you got into the first one. And that question is, what is fat? In other words, people get fat, people struggle with fat, but what is it that people struggle with? Number two is, where does it come from? What's the role of it? So, in give it a short explanation, fat is a stored form of energy. It's how your body takes takes the food that you eat and store it. This is how you store any sort of energy. You take a cell phone, you plug it into a wall, you take that energy coming from the wall, you store it into your cell phone's battery, and you use it for a later stage. So in theory, in principle, fat is the very same thing in the human body. It's what we take from the food, which is our outlet, and then we store it to be used at a later stage. So that's the one part about that one. So now, but where does it come from? It obviously comes from food, and people handle food differently. Some people can eat whatever they eat and not seem to be gaining weight, and then some people has to be very, very, very careful what they eat because they seems to be gaining weight from just about anything. So there's all these nuances that you need to keep in mind, but the fundamental question is, what is fat? And fat is, as I said, stored form of energy. Where do we get energy from? Every time you eat something, you store energy. And important to that is to remember your body doesn't discriminate. So in other words, if you say I'm snacking, to your body is just food. Because I think we make the mistakes. If you have asked somebody, hey, how many times you eat per day, somebody would say, oh, I eat 3 times a day. And then you're like, but that cannot be true. Because just wake up in the morning, you have breakfast, you get to work, you might have a cup of coffee. Some people, I remember back in the day where, from my own experience, I would have my breakfast, I'll get to work, somebody would have a muffin or something, I'd eat again, and then I would say later the day I have another cup of coffee, or I get a snack from somebody, I'll eat again. So it's like already 3 times. And then by lunch, I'll have my fourth meal, so to speak. I'll eat for the fourth time in the day. But if you had asked me at the end of the day how many times I ate for the day, I would say no, I ate 3 times, counting breakfast, lunch, and supper. But all the meals that I had in between, those I conveniently don't count in, because we are made to believe that sort of almost like those smaller meals in between are not meals per se, they are snacks or have their own term, they fall in their own category. But at the end of the day, your body doesn't care. Food is food. So every time you eat food, you store it. So you store it in two forms. One form is like in your liver, it's like, I think it's called glycogen. I'm not the expert on it, and this is not the aim of the channel to be scientific, but it's to give information. The first part is that yes, it gets stored in glycogen, which is your easy way. That's why you eat now, you full, kind of, you have energy. And then the second part is the long-term storage, where your body takes the food and store it for the long term. So that is the question we need to answer. What is fat and where do we get fat from, right? So here is the answer to that. We get fat from the foods that we eat. Every time you eat something, your body goes into this chemical reaction as to how it's going to prepare to process this food. And one of the ways it processes the food, one of the ways it transforms the food from, let's say, a piece of bread that you just had to piece of fat is going to be in your body 5 years later, a few years, because it seems like the last forever, is by a hormone called, I forget the name. Anyway, I'll put it in the description. So insulin, there you go. Insulin is the hormone that the body uses to produce. Your body produce insulin. Insulin is mainly used as a storage hormone. Insulin is the body's instruction, or your brain's instruction, your cells instruction to the rest of the body, and say, take this food that we just ate and transform it and store it, because we might be needing it later. That's the first part of it, insulin. Part 2 to this is then the question, how do we handle fat? How do we get rid of fat? In other words, there's 2 ways you can do, right? Your body, let me explain a story. There's this series that I used to watch on Net Geo, is called Doomsday Preppers. Doomsday Preppers, these people that believe the world is going to come to an end at some point. So they build shelters, they build underground bunkers, they build safe havens, and they stack them with food, they stack them with emergency supplies, they stack them with all these other things that they believe that when the world ends tomorrow, I'm gonna need this food for at least a year or 2 years, 3 years, and that's how I'm gonna keep myself busy. So coming back to this, how this relates to the body, your body is exactly the same. Every time you eat, because primarily our bodies are still primates, so we think in terms of survival. Your body tries to keep you alive, so every time you eat, your body goes, okay, this person eats now, what if later there's no food around, so let me store this food, right? So insulin rush in, it goes to the cells and says, open up, we need to store food. Your cells open up and all this fat gets stored there, because fat is a stored form of energy, right? So it gets stored into your fat cells and there it stays. But the issue, so not the issue, the question then be, let's say these doomsday preppers wake up one day and they have a change in mind and they find out, like, okay, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to be a doomsday prep anymore. So my question will be, how are they going to get rid of this food? Or the question your body is going to ask, how am I going to get rid of this fat in my body? I would think there's a 2-pronged approach to it that you have to do simultaneously. One, the doomsday prepper have to stop going to the mall to buy new food, and 2, and they have to simultaneously use the food that they've stored already. So how do you do that in terms of your human body? One, you can stop eating. That will work. It's gonna be tough. That's a topic for another day, and I tell my story as to how I lost my fat. But the principle was, you had to reduce the times that you eat, not the amount of food that you eat, but the times in which you eat it. You have to reduce that. And secondly, you need to somehow tell your body, hey, I think it's time for you to stop storing fat. And where you do that is by getting rid of the foods that's going to stimulate your body to release insulin. And those foods are highly processed foods, sugars. There's about 200 names for sugar. It's highly processed food, it's your fast foods, it's your sugary drinks, and it's your overall sugar that you put in the food. I'll put in the list of this video description. The rest of this is to foods to avoid, and in the next video, I'll try to explain my journey. So what I did with this principle of what fat is, how we get fat, how the body stores fat, and how we can get rid of fat. And by the way, exercise is not it. You can go to the gym for years. I bet you've seen people who've been running for years and they still look the same. So going to the gym is not the alpha and the omega that everybody makes it out to be. It does play a role, but more in the next video. Till next time, have a good one. And then remember, this is channel is called Amateur Health. I don't know how you pronounce that name. Afrikaans is fighting with me to pronounce it, but that's about it. It's about general people doing seemingly mundane things at the end of the day to live a better life. If you like this video, please do like and subscribe. I'm gonna put in the list of foods kind of in the video description and hope that helps somehow with enjoy.